Hello, everybody, and welcome back to World Talks, where every word matters. And now joining me here on World Talks to discuss the new European Parliament after its first week and the selection of Ursula Von Der Leyen for another term as President of the European Commission is Polish MP and Deputy Speaker of the Parliament, Krzysztof Bosak. Hello, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Hello, and thank you for the invitation.
Well, it's great to have you in. Now, I'm going to start off with a situation, unfolding in Brussels and Strasbourg. Many parties that are Eurosceptic, anti-establishment parties, including your party, Confederacja, and Germany's Alternative for Germany, or AfD, were claiming that after the European parliamentary elections, the results will change how Europe functions, how it works. But so far, they failed to block the mainstream parties, which have comfortably elected Ms. von der Leyen for yet another 5-year term as President of the European Commission. So why are all these parties, why are your parties and the coalition of them so ineffective?
I believe that we are effective, but mainstream parties are still in mainstream. All this talk that we heard in mainstream media that we have a wave of nationalism or wave of populism across the Europe, it was false in my opinion. There was no clear data from polls, from social research that such a trend exists. We have some countries in European Union where Euro-critical or Eurosceptical parties are more popular, but these are rather exceptions, not the rule. We have only the one country in Europe, it's France, where party number one, or maybe France and Hungary now, where party number one in elections is strong and at the same time non-mainstream right. So during electoral campaign, I always claimed in my speeches that there will be no revolution in European institutions after elections, that it will be maybe a little bit shift in the proportion between mainstream parties and alternative right, or maybe alternative left also, like in Germany, parties. And this is what we have. Mainstream is still strong. Ursula von der Leyen got another term, and Euro-critical and Eurosceptical parties got more members of European Parliament and were able to form three political groups, which are stronger than ever before. But still, it's not enough to change the situation, the proportion, the majority in the chamber.
Right, so in that role, what role do they provide? Do you think it's more of a check and balance on these mainstream parties?
I believe that it's a typical role of opposition in democracy. So they propose a different approach and voters could decide. In many countries, for example, 15 or 20 years ago, voters didn't have any alternative to typical pro-European center-right political correct parties. Now, in almost every European country, you have alternative right, you have parties and politicians and leaders who are critical towards mainstream pan-European movement against policies of European Commission. And I think it's right, it's okay, it's how it should be, that we should have some alternatives. The situation that center-right and center-left and progressive liberals and far-left parties agree on almost every issue, it's not democracy, it's an oligarchy. So I believe that we have an opposition in European Parliament, and this opposition with its critique towards European Commission propose different approach and different perspective for the voters, and voters are looking, in my opinion, for this different approach because Europe is weaker than ever before. The economic role of Europe in the world, the level of social security, of public security. We see decrease on almost every issue. And we should analyze why it is so, why this. Maybe the main strategy that is introduced for last decades is wrong.
Many say that the far right is too fragmented. You've kind of alluded to that, to be a greater collective force. What would you say if someone argued that the real alliance of nationalists from different countries is a contradiction in terms, right?
First, I don't like the term far right. I believe that if we call somebody far right or far left, we should use this term not to national conservative parties or parties who are skeptical to the process of building a pan-European state. We should use this term to brand politicians who are truly extremists. So they use violence, they intentionally spread hate against some groups. But if somebody respects rule of law, human rights and the rules of democracy, but he criticizes mainstream policies, it's not being far, it's being alternative, yes? Mm-hmm. And it's not wrong, it's good. This is first. Second, of course, let's say national conservative parties, moderate nationalist parties and patriotic sovereignist parties have always different approach to many international problems, and it is truly difficult to build something like international movement of patriots and nationalists. It was always harder to cooperate among right-wing parties than, for example, than socialist parties or communist parties. They have more than 100 years of tradition of building internationalist leftist movement. So it's difficult, but it is necessary, because if in European Union we will not have a good platform to cooperate and to build alternative agenda for whole Europe, not for every different country, the situation will not change. And if situation will not change in European institution, next countries after Great Britain will try to leave European Union, or all this system of institutions will collapse, because it is impossible to push whole continent into economic decrease and insecurity, selling it to the societies like it's a new kind of progress. It's not progress, it's regress.
Do you still support Polexit or Poland leaving the EU?
I believe that it is an option. This option for now is not necessary, and it's not number one choice for Confederation, Freedom and Independence, my political party, or national movement, my faction inside Confederation. But I believe it's an option that should be on the table if we see in the future, for example, next years, next decades, if the situation in European Union still will be so difficult for Poland and for our economy. For example, now we have one of the highest prices of energy in the world. It is very hard to compete on international markets if you have so big burden. We should do something about this, and this is not extending this climate policy and extending this emission market into ETS 2 system, or increasing the goals of reducing emissions. It's not the way it should be. So if European Union will not change, I will support exit movement. For now, we are focused on securing our national interests, and we will now see if it is possible being in the European Parliament, because before there were only law and justice politicians representing Polish right and Polish patriots. And from our perspective, law and justice politicians were always in favor of European Union. They supported joining to the European Union, they supported Lisbon Treaty, they supported climate policy, they supported Fit for 55, they supported many things that we would never support European Green Deal as well.
Is it the price of energy? Do you believe that if Poland was somehow outside the European Union and it controlled its own energy policy, somehow it would it would be able to buy energy cheaper somewhere on the world markets, or? Or do you think it's rather the effects of
producing energy is cheaper than the current price. Current price is almost doubled by artificially created system of costs, of taxes, carbon taxes. We call this permission for emission. Yes, and it's a false product. Yes, it's like electronic money, but it's not money, it's cost. So we produced a system of artificially created costs, and we put it on our economy, and we doubled our energy prices, and we could have immediately lower prices of energy and a better competitive situation on international markets if we cancel this policy. But of course, we understand that they are going not only they are not going to cancel this policy. They are going to extend this policy because they believe that this is the only one option that we should go, and we should give a good example to the world. But in China and in the US and in India, nobody waits for a good example from Brussels. It's for me, it's so naive that I can't believe that sane people who are political leaders can propose something so stupid.
I want to ask you about your colleague Eva Zajączkowska-Herning. She gave a scathing speech in rebuttal of von der Leyen's candidacy. But in reality, don't you appreciate the fact that under her leadership, the EU has managed major crises such as the pandemic, the war in Ukraine? What should have been done? What would you have done differently?
Well, we do not think that this crisis management was even close to be good management. We believe that COVID policies were based on false claims and were bad for economy and bad for public health. We believe that all these vaccine orders in international corporations, maybe it was corruption, maybe it was stupidity, but it was very non-transparent and beneficial for European countries. For example, our government, that time it was Law and Justice government, bought many times more vaccines than all Polish society could take. It was maybe it was corruption, maybe it was completely incompetence and unprofessional behavior, but we are very critical, and European institutions were part of this problem. Then Ukraine, we believe that introducing I can't even count now, it's 12 or 14 parts of sanctions towards Russia, and it's still not effective. It's it's bad. It's a bad policy. Then supporting Ukraine with weapons, too small, too late. Supporting refugees. Brussels did nothing to support Poland when we took millions of Ukrainian refugees. So we are critical to this crisis management, and we are very critical to most important policies introduced by von der Leyen. So first, climate policy, European Green Deal. It was her most important issue. Then migrant compact. We are critical. We believe it's a bad direction. We should go to the opposite, not build the system to distribute illegal migrants around Europe, but to secure the borders. And we are ready to support every country in Europe to secure border,
tripling
but
of
not
Frontex.
taking them and putting them and giving them everything and encouraging next thousands and millions to come here. It's very, very bad direction. In fact, for me,
in her speech,
it's very hard. For me, it's very hard to find anything good in, let's say, von der Leyen work in European institutions.
In her speech, she did say she was going to triple the amount of Frontex from 10 to 30,000, but I don't know if that...
For us, Frontex, I talked with people who work in Polish border guards, and I asked them a serious question. Do you feel any support from Frontex? Do you feel that they will solve any problem that we have on our border? And they said the answer is obvious, no. They could only create new legal problems between Poland and European Union and on our borders. Then they do not have men that they could send in the field to work in the field to secure the border fence. They have office workers who create new strategies, new papers,
new bureaucracy.
And new bureaucracy. This is not what we need.
Mm-hmm. Many people in Poland were shocked that the Confederation teamed up with AfD in the European Parliament. Now, this is a party that had downplayed some Nazi war crimes and often takes anti-Polish lines. Why did you choose them, and is there no other choice amongst other nationalist parties?
First, there is no any agreement between Confederation and this new group, Sovereignist group, where AfD are also members. There is only half of our delegation to European Parliament, 3 members of European Parliament from New Hope Party joined this group. Other people from National Movement and Confederation of Polish Crown, second 2 parties inside Confederation, didn't join, and they are still negotiating with other groups like Patriots for Europe or Conservative and Reformists. I believe that these are better options, but of course this agreement between New Hope members of European Parliament and the Sovereignist group could be also beneficial if they will negotiate inside the group, and their agenda, their statements will be good for Poland and for Europe at the same time. And I think it's possible. We should influence every political group in European Parliament. I believe that politics in European institutions and the European Parliament is very rarely talking with people that we like and we agree. It's all the time talking with people that we disagree, and we have different interests in different approach. And it is in centrist groups, and it is like that in also Eurocritical and Eurosceptical, even nationalist groups. It's not new. We had such groups before with people with controversial interviews, and I believe that we should not focus on controversies. The most controversial member of European Parliament was not invited to this group from AfD, but we should rather focus on joint agenda. And they are opposing all that I described before.
I want to ask you about because we're almost out of time, I want to ask you about Poland and gearing up for the presidential elections. You were a candidate in the last elections and actually came in 4th place. Are you ready to run in the presidential elections?
Before we have to organize primaries to decide who will be the presidential candidate of Confederation. For now, we have 2 or 3 leaders who would like to be presidential candidates.
Are you one of them?
Yes, I said many times that I will start in primaries if we organize them. Second is, of course, Sławomir Mencen, a leader of New Hope. And the third, who is thinking whether to start in primaries to be a candidate or not, is newly elected member of European Parliament and the leader of the third party inside the Confederation. His name is Grzegorz Braun. Mm-hmm. And he was also a presidential candidate in 2015. So we have, let's say, we have a menu of candidates.
When do you hold your primaries as a party?
I think we should decide this month or another, and we should organize this this year.
All right, Krzysztof Bosak, Deputy Speaker of the Polish Parliament, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you very much for the invitation and for this conversation.
Thank you. And that concludes this edition of World Talks. Thanks for joining us, and stay with us for more here on TVP World.